everyone. This is a special edition of Colorado Mesa University's Facebook Live. We've been using this format over the last year and a half as really an opportunity to communicate with our campus and our community, parents and students, around COVID response. Over the last month, we have redirected these Facebook Lives around our Maverick Momentum Tour as we celebrate the people and purposes and places of our university. Tonight is a really special conversation because we get to tap into what we call a dual role and mission university. For some time, we have been a dual role and mission university, and this may be something that comes up more frequently, has become more vogue, but for us, this is a categorization of our institution that's 40 years in the making. And what it means is that in addition to a selective regional public university, we also maintain a community college, a career, technical, and vocational programs here at CMU. Because the reality is that when you're 250 miles from everyone, you've got to be able to serve everyone right here. Today, we've got a really esteemed group of panelists, and I'm going to start by allowing them to introduce themselves. So, Rex, if I can ask you to start.
I'm Rex Nelson. I'm the president of Western Filament Incorporated. We're a textile manufacturing company here in town. We're neighbors with WCCC. We're just right down the street from them.
Brigitte Sundermann, vice president for community college affairs, right here at WCCC.
Alan Golden, I'm the director of Technical College of the Rockies down in Delta.
I'm Barbara McLachlan. I'm a state representative from Durango. I represent 6 counties in southwest Colorado.
So Representative McLachlan, I want to start with you. You know, we've had this conversation over a number of years as we think about our economy, we think about meeting young people where they're at, providing them with a suite of opportunities. Talk to us. You're the chair of the Education Committee in the State House of Representatives. Great to have a Western Sloper in that role. Talk to us a little bit about your work in state policy making at the Capitol.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. What an amazing school. I didn't know about this, so this is quite the treat for me. We do, in the committee, we do pre-K through college. So we cover all realms of education. And over the past several years, we've really tried to get vocational education as a big, important part of what we do. Not everybody goes to college, and I think we need to realize that there's really fabulous careers out there, and you don't need to go to college and get into debt for it. You can go to a fabulous school like this, get out, have a job, have a family, maybe buy a house. I don't know. You can't do that in Durango necessarily, but it's really an exciting opportunity for everybody. And I think bringing from the high school up to here, I think it's a brilliant move because kids in high school are wondering what I'm going to do and I can't afford college, so what else is there? Well, here's what else there is. It's a really great higher education. And so we are emphasizing that a lot in the legislature and trying to get more people into schools, anything past high school. So this is a really fabulous program for that. So I'm really happy to support you on this.
Well, Representative McLachlan, I appreciate that comment. And as we think about our work, obviously there are some commonalities between rural and urban areas, healthcare and the hospitality industry and so forth, but there's a variety of other things that we have to do, obviously, in a more rural area like sustainable agriculture, supporting the oil and gas industry, and a variety of related industries. Rex, you are a business owner. Tell us about your organization and the way that you articulate with programs like those at Western Colorado Community College.
Sure. We're, again, a textile manufacturing company. We're an 83-year-old company. We've been around for a very long time. Moved here in 1990 from California, one of the relocate companies originally. And we make a lot of great products that go into many, many different industries. But one of the main industries we sell into is in the commercial and military aerospace market. And we make wire harness materials that go over the wire bundles that run through an aircraft. So we sell to companies like Boeing, Lockheed, Rolls-Royce. We sell to Tesla, SpaceX, Chevy, automobiles, just a number of different types of companies. So kind of a really high-tech company that works with really high-tech fibers and converts those into some really interesting applications. But we've established a partnership with both CMU and WCCC with regards to recruiting talent from the organization. I constantly reach out asking for people to come into our organization. We work with the engineering team, we work with their accounting team. Frankly, over 85% of our current management staff are all CMU alumni, which is kind of impressive, down to actually from our quality manager all the way down to just our IT person, for example. So we have a great partnership with WCCC, and we continue to expand upon that through internships and bringing people in through various different types of programs and opportunities that we have within our company.
Rex, you chatted about partnerships, and Representative McLachlan, you talked about this idea of the high school transition into university and post-secondary. Brigitte, talk to us a little bit about some of the partnerships that you've been forging with high schools and how we're trying to identify ways to help students at a younger age see themselves in hands-on career and technical education.
Well, thanks, John. So we started this 30 years ago, and it was really a partnership with the school district, the businesses, and the university, allowing students to try something out. It was really just elective credit. But over those 30 years, and especially in the last 10, those same students still come here every day from the high schools, every single one in the Valley, and have received nearly 5,000 credits. That's $1.5 million savings to the families of this community, because those credits are free to those families while they are in high school. And we've done that with the high schools. We're doing it with Concurrent and now with the Mobile Learning Lab.
You know, Alan, you obviously help in a neighboring town, but in a place like Western Colorado, nothing gets done without partnerships. Talk about a little of the work that you're doing up in Delta, Technical College of the Rockies, and the suite of offerings that you're able to offer students up there.
Yeah, President Marshall, thank you, first of all, for the invitation. It's great to be here. Great to take part in this wonderful tour. You know, we're one of 3 area technical colleges in the state. So Emily Griffith is the other one. Pickens is in Aurora. Emily Griffith is in Denver. We're the only rural one. So we have a service area that's 10,000 square miles, much like your service area. So yeah, we have to have partnerships. One of the partnerships I'm most proud of is the articulation work that I've done with Western Colorado Community College. And that really allows our students to go through our programs and then come right up here and take their credits and apply them towards an associate's degree, which is pretty powerful. We have a lot of the same programs at different levels. We do have a few unique ones. We have an HVAC program, and we're working on expanding our program list as well, just as Western Colorado Community College is. But yeah, I believe strongly in the power of career and technical education. I think every aspect of your life somehow is impacted by that. If you think about when you wake up and your heater comes on, if you don't have an HVAC technician, that's not going to happen. So the car you drive, every part of your life is really impacted by somebody in CTE.
Representative McLachlan, you are in Southwest Colorado. Obviously, we're sitting here in Northwest Colorado, where sometimes there's more jackrabbits than people. Talk to us a little about your perspective of the unique nature of having to serve these vast areas and can't basically travel between any of them without traveling through 1 or 2 mountain passes, right?
This is very true, yes. Red Mountain Pass. You know, I think in the legislature, everybody thinks the big arguments are between Democrats and Republicans, but I think there's more strife between rural and urban than there is Democrat and Republican. They really don't get us. They have, you know, for instance, I represent 6 counties, and I have friends in Denver who represent 10 blocks, and it's the same population in there. And they go, God, it took me 45 minutes to get across town. I'm like, oh my God, I take 5 hours to get to the other end of my district. So we need to stick together and see what jobs are here, how we keep people here, how we create industry, and not jobs necessarily, but careers. We really want people to stay here and love it here. And you know, with agriculture is a huge part of Colorado. And everybody says, well, if you're going to complain, why don't you just move up to Denver? And I'm like, I'm not complaining, but why don't you move down here if you want to eat? And then they're like, oh, well, there's that, isn't there? So I really love emphasizing the need on the Western Slope and in rural Colorado to get this work done and to train our students and to give them good careers, that they're happy. And I guess starting them off in high school is really great, because if they don't like it, they can switch then instead of switching when they're 40 years old and going, I've never liked this job ever. So, so I think keeping kids in rural areas, we like rural Colorado, and I have to live in Denver part of the year. Yeah, parking just drives me crazy. All my gray hairs I attribute to parking in Denver. So, so I really want to have rural Colorado thrive, and I think this is a great way to do it, is to educate the next generation with careers in rural Colorado.
You know, I appreciate you talking about that dynamic of urban versus rural, and sometimes even more strength or strife between that and partisanship. And you know, during COVID, I think in some ways this became even more clear to us. And you know, we chat about this idea of having to reach small populations across the different, you know, mountain passes and difficult geography that we have to navigate. Brigitte, you partnered with a foundation, the Sturm Family Foundation, at the outset of COVID to pilot this idea of a mobile learning lab, a 16-wheeler pulling a tractor trailer that has a classroom inside it to be able to take career and technical education. Talk to us about how important that is in rural Colorado and how that helps us reach students in today's workplace.
I'll start with the story. So we were taking it everywhere. Take it one spot and back. I'm taking a break, I'm going hoarse, and these kids come up and they said, "Are you the mobile learning lab lady?" I go, "Yes." And these kids I've never met hugged me. They were like, "We would have never been able to see something like this if you wouldn't have brought it up." And really, even at the end of the day when you're tired, that's what keeps us going. And so DeBeck's maybe 30 minutes away, but to them, it's another state. They can't get anywhere. And so bringing this mobile learning lab, and not just any mobile learning lab, it is the future. It's automation. It's what they can we were bringing their dreams right to their doorstep. And I think that, to me, is what we're about.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, and I think, Alan, a little bit about our future throughout the region. And oftentimes we think about how are we going to get students to come to us. But I think this dynamic maybe allows partners and consortia to start thinking about how we take the classrooms to these small towns. Talk to us a little about how some of the challenges you've dealt with geographically, whether that's the Roaring Fork or on the far side of Delta County. How have you tried to reach those communities that really need access but have a hard time getting to you?
Yeah, I think that's a real challenge. I mean, Brigitte's story is very touching, but I've seen that happen so many times. And so we really have to figure out a way to get that education to those communities. And we've done a few things. We have a small campus in Gunnison where we're teaching cosmetology and CNA. One of the other focuses we've had is providing some hybrid training. So places like Norwood and Nucla can do our CNA classes. And so we can get high schoolers the training there that they wouldn't have access to otherwise. But that's going to be an ongoing focus, and we look forward to continuing to be able to serve all of our 6-county area much better.
You know, it strikes me, during the pandemic, everybody sort of shifted to this remote learning conversation. But of course, when you're talking about CTE, much of this is not remote learning. It's hands-on, it's tactile, it's kinetic. You know, Alan, Brigitte, how do you think about blending those two modalities in the future? What does that look like as we start to look out on the horizon?
I think big picture, it's really being innovative every day, trying to figure out how we work together at different schools. We have different programs. How do we allow those programs to work in different areas, whether it's mobile learning labs, hybrid, but it's really what this is about. It's if you don't have the partnerships, if you can't form that with businesses, maybe use a business to use their lab. Go to FRU to use their lab because we have too many students here. If you don't think out of the box, we're not going to be able to help the rural communities.
Yeah, I would just echo that and say, you know, it's one thing to look at it as a barrier or an obstacle. It's another way to say that's an opportunity. Mm-hmm. You know, we can get into a business and use some of their CNC machines. We can get into a business, use some of their welding equipment, and then we create a connection that's going to help them as well.
Representative McLachlan, you talked about this idea of trying to provide our students in rural areas a pathway to stay here. Rex, I was chatting with the chief of police down in Montrose a few weeks ago and chatting about this challenge that they have in Montrose where they might bring somebody in and get them trained up and then they head to a bigger city because they didn't grow up in a rural area. And he talked a lot about this idea of how we're going to try and grow our own, finding kids who are in a rural area that understand that lifestyle and want to be part of that. You shared that about your workforce and being able to bring those students up through CMU and WCCC. Talk to us about how that experience has affected you and how you see your ability to grow your own right here in Grand Junction.
Sure. First of all, you didn't mention my name when you spoke of the chief of police, did you? From Montrose.
I left that out, actually.
So we're unique in the fact that we don't have a lot of really skilled technical positions in our plant as an hourly worker. Most of our employees are just basically high school graduates, maybe some technical school, technical education, and we have an unbelievable workforce still. Pulling in from various different local areas and pulling in from the community college as well, pulling in from some people from CMU. But it is extremely frustrating when we bring people in and they do get trained and then they go someplace else, they go to the big city or something of that nature and move on. We try to do everything we possibly can to retain people within the factory. And by doing that, we also reach out to WCCC. We try to work with them with regards to further educating them, investing in their future as well, and then trying to retain those employees for a longer period of time.
Well, we sit here today in this beautiful campus. Prior to this conversation, we all had the benefit of getting to walk around and seeing our students in action. The vibrancy of these programs, whether it's agriculture, whether it's law enforcement, first responders, winemaking, and all the rest, lines and so forth. And it just strikes me, Brigitte, that in this audience today are students who are not just adding to the vibrancy of our economy, but adding to the vibrancy of our community. The roles, the services, the support we need in this community are being developed right here. And so worth reflecting on the amazing work that's happening right under our nose. So I want to thank all the students and instructors and others that are here in this audience. And with that, I want to open it up. We've got a great studio audience with us today, and open it up. We've got a few minutes available for questions that we want to make available. Nina, you want to start us off?
My name is Nina Anderson. I own Express Employment here in Grand Junction, and I have an office in Montrose. Seeing how this program has moved so far in the last 10 years is really amazing. So thank you for all you're doing. But in the workforce, we're having a really hard time finding employees. Are you finding that recruiting students is as difficult as it is recruiting workforce?
Do you guys want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I can speak to that first. I think students at TCR, we've had great numbers for enrollment. We're continuing to see wait lists in most of our programs. I think there is a little bit of a lag between getting everybody trained and getting them into the workforce. And then also making sure that we have the correct training to get them into the jobs that are out there. But I do think in general, our numbers are great. I think we're seeing a great generation of future workers coming through our doors. Brigitte, would you say the same?
I agree. I mean, our numbers have been growing. I think part of that also has to do with the depth of how we're reaching out to students. It's not just technical scholars, but pathways in technology, so students can actually get an associate's while they're still in high school. We had 1,500 registrations in 100 different summer camps. So at the very least, a middle schooler knows what they don't want to do for the rest of their life. And that's a big deal, right? And most of our students took 4 or 5 different summer camps. So you may not want to be a chef, but maybe you want to be an aviator. And I think over the last 10 years, deepening that to the middle school level and getting them excited has been a huge push in our success the last few years.
Yeah, Nina, I appreciate that question so much because it does strike me that this ongoing work as a community, that we have to have this conversation with friends and families and neighbors about the reality is that old construct, what I would think of as kind of an anachronism of the 1960s, that you either go to college or you're not going to be successful. It's just wrong, because the reality is that there's so many different pathways that our economy needs and that families need, and there's so many different talents and aptitudes. And so our challenge really is to provide this continuum of opportunities. And as a community, we've got to continue to help our young people see that pathway, see those opportunities, and encourage it along. And so I'm grateful to have partners like so many in this room that are continuing to have that conversation as we change that idea about what our culture says success looks like. Thanks for that question. Are there other questions in the studio audience today? Yeah, go ahead, young lady. We've got a microphone that's coming over to you.
Hi, so I was one of the actors out in the scene today. My name's Maddie H.
I'm glad to hear that, Maddie, because you look like you've had a rough afternoon.
Yes, it was a big laceration to my head here. My biggest question is, so I'm originally from out of state, and I do come from a rural area as well. But when I came to CMU, I noticed that WCC was not as promoted on the main campus at CMU. And I really found my home at WCC. So I've kind of switched my roles into coming to WCC more rather than staying on campus. How do you plan on helping bridge that gap more and more as we continue to grow as a university?
Brigitte, you want to take a shot at that?
I'd love to. I think we hear that a lot. I mean, we're smaller, and so we have a tendency to feel like a family. And if I didn't see you in class at 7, I'm going to find you. They don't like it the first time, but they like it afterwards because we remember. But really having a presence at CMU, I think we're doing that more and more all the time, as far as our faculty and staff being part of different events at CMU. I think we've been growing that over the last couple of years, but to your point, I think we can always do better, and maybe have a car show over there, and maybe do some of the tours we do in a smaller fashion at CMU as well. So thank you for that.
Maddie, I'd also just reflect on the fact that most of us are sort of acculturated to think of you're either a university or a community college, and when you're either fish or fowl, most folks aren't used to this idea of a university that can span those things. And so I think that's part of our challenge, is continuing to tell our story, the vibrancy of what we offer to all different students. And I'm so thrilled to hear that you found your home here out at the Bishop campus in WCCC. Are there any other questions before we wrap up today? There's a question over here somewhere. Sorry, there's some bright lights over here.
Just a point on the combined university. I know for our program in land surveying and geomatics, it's a big selling point to say that we're a division of CMU. It gives the people throughout the state that image that we're part of a bigger entity, and it's helping us a lot, and I think continuing to promote that idea. You're unique as a university to having a community college as part of you, and this community college is unique in having a university as part of it. That's not the typical for community colleges, and I'd sure like to see that continue.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear you say that, and I do think it comes back to this sort of Western Colorado ethic, where if you can put the vanity projects aside and in humility just recognize the importance of all the various elements of this institution, we're a lot stronger because of each other, and I appreciate those comments a lot. Yeah. Yeah, there's a question over here.
How can outside entities as well as the state work with CMU and WCCC and local businesses to better help support the success of WCCC students as well as CMU students? And they're kind of one and the same, but how can these outside entities help?
Representative McLachlan, you get this statewide perspective. What's your sense of how communities can come alongside these institutions and best support?
I think a lot of it's education. I think people think that community colleges are small towns, but not necessarily rural. They're just regular classes, but they're smaller. I'm not sure that we see this kind of school that often. You know, that it is not the four-year college per se, but it's incredible training. And I think we need to advertise that more. I think we need to promote it, that there's opportunities that are already here. You don't need to just go graduate from high school and maybe do an internship and hope for the best that you get a job with that place. I think there's a lot of training that goes with it, and there's, I think when you have that knowledge and you've been able to choose what you want to do, if you don't like one thing, you can go to another here. I think it's just an education of what we need, and it kind of goes back to the wounded woman's, her comment over there, and I'm really sorry about that. But I think we need to promote it more, and I think we need to educate people as to what a gift this is to the Western Slope and how we need to promote it more.
And incidentally, the legislature will be considering funding for higher ed here in a few months, so there's that.
There's that, yes, always.
Are there other questions? We've got one more over here, looks like. I think we've got time for one more. Looks like you were in the same car wreck.
Yeah, I was deceased. So I'm Kelsey. I'm from near Pueblo, so I don't want to take away from the fact that community college can be an amazing thing, because I was a concurrent student who graduated with my associates. So with that, you put a lot of emphasis in like the high school. What about the individuals who are like older, or for example, some of the people in our community who may be homeless or without jobs? How can we better bridge that gap to maybe give them an opportunity similar to the high school students, because funding is hard and that's really difficult. So it'd be nice to see like us partner with groups where we can maybe bring that to individuals who don't have that opportunity.
I love that question. Brigitte, I wonder if we might share some about the Finish It grants, some of the work that COSI and some other scholarships have allowed for adult learners who maybe have some college or ready for reskilling, upskilling, or next skilling.
I just couldn't stop looking at Stephanie as you were asking that question. She does our COSI grants. We call them the what if. Basically, what if you didn't have any barriers? What if you had the money to go to college? There's also monies available for, maybe you can have money for tuition, but then you still need to put food on the table. So we have funding for that as well. And Stephanie, if you'd raise your hand. Stephanie is the one to talk to, or you can really contact any of us as well. But we do have some funding out there, and maybe we need to get it out there a little bit more on social media or something so that more people are aware of it.
Well, I just so appreciate that question.
I have one thing to add. Two things, I guess. We've passed a couple bills. One was 2 years ago, I think, and it was for people who graduated from high school and just thought, I'll never go to college, I can't afford it, it's not interesting to me. But they did do a lot of work. They got some certifications along the way. And this bill allows them now to get college credit for that work, so that if they do want to go back to college, they will have a lot of credits already just for their workforce experience. So we thought that was a good way to do it. There's another one that if you've gone to 2 years of college and you just dropped out, COVID or whatever, you can get an associate's degree with those 2 years, even though you were going for a 4-year school before. So it kind of ends the education and they can start again on that. So it doesn't answer necessarily the homeless question, but it addresses part of that group that you're talking about.
Appreciate that very much. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here. Those of you streaming online, thank you for tuning in to this conversation. We're so grateful to be able to have this conversation and celebrate the jewel that is Western Colorado Community College and the partnerships that we have throughout the region. So thank you to my panelists, thank you to those of you in the audience, and we'll see you next time.